Some places never lose their voices. They may be silent to the world outside, but inside, the echoes never stop. That's how it felt the first time I stepped into the old Orpheum Theatre. The city had left it to rot for decades, but to me, it felt like it had only just gone quiet, and not willingly. I had walked past the building hundreds of times as a child. Its stone facade was cracked, the letters on its marquee long since fallen, leaving only a faint shadow of their shapes. But even as a boy, I swore I could hear something when I stopped to listen: faint applause, laughter, the rumble of a voice from behind the boarded doors. My parents told me not to imagine things, not to stop near the theatre after dark. Of course, that only made it worse. Now, years later, I wasn't just walking past. I was inside. The air hit me first, stale, thick with dust, but carrying something else. The faintest trace of grease paint, the sweetness of old perfume, the burnt smell of stage lights long gone cold. It was like the theatre had been waiting all this time, keeping its last performance trapped in the walls. My flashlight beam slid across rows of broken seats, their red velvet torn open and spilling yellow stuffing. The balcony hung above like a watching shadow, its railings eaten away by rust. And at the far end of the cavernous hall stood the stage. The curtain was still there. Tattered and faded, the once bright velvet now hung in long, ragged strips. But it moved. Slowly, deliberately, as though stirred by a hand from behind. Yet the air around me was dead still. I froze. The sound came next. It was faint, so faint I thought it was my imagination at first. A whisper, drifting down from the stage. The rhythm of words, not clear enough to catch, but unmistakable. Someone was speaking. I stepped forward, boots crunching on shattered glass. The sound grew a little clearer, a murmur of syllables strung together like lines of dialogue. My flashlight wavered up to the curtain, and for the briefest moment, I swore I saw a shape behind it, tall, thin, unmoving. The light shifted, and the figure was gone. My heart hammered, but something in me wanted to go deeper. I climbed the 3 steps up to the stage, the boards groaning under my weight. The smell was stronger here: makeup, dust, wood polish, all mixed together into something strangely alive. I reached out and touched the curtain. It was cold, damp, and heavier than I expected. For a moment, it stopped moving beneath my hand. Then, from somewhere high above, came a sound that nearly dropped me to my knees. A single, sharp pop. The chandelier. I swung my light upward. The great chandelier still hung in the center of the ceiling, crystals dulled with grime, but it swayed as if something had brushed past it. Dust rained down in glittering motes. I stumbled back a step. The whispering had stopped. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was waiting. On the edge of the stage lay a stack of old posters, half buried under debris. I knelt and pulled one free. The paper cracked in my hands, but the print was still visible, a performance dated October 31st, 1938. The lead actor's name was circled in heavy black ink. I stared at it, my mouth dry. The name was mine. I don't know how long I stood frozen on that stage, staring at the poster with my name on it. My flashlight trembled in my hand, its beam casting long, quivering shadows across the boards. The whispering had stopped, but the silence was worse. It pressed in, heavy, as though the theater itself was holding its breath. I forced myself to move. Behind the curtain, a narrow stairwell led into the backstage halls. The smell changed here. Less dust, more of something sharp, chemical. Grease paint. The kind actors used to smear on their faces before a performance. The dressing rooms lined a cramped corridor, doors half open, mirrors still mounted on the walls. I stepped into the first. Dust coated every surface, yet the room felt strangely intact. A row of vanity bulbs framed a cracked mirror, most of them shattered, but one flickered faintly with a dying glow, though the power had been cut decades ago. A trunk lay open on the floor, spilling sequin costumes dulled by time. A mask with hollow eyes stared up from the mess, its painted smile frozen. I reached for it, but stopped when I caught sight of the mirror. My reflection was wrong. The face staring back was mine, Yes, but older, gaunter, the skin stretched tight over bone. The mouth moved, but I hadn't spoken. The words came faintly, as though from far away. You're late. The performance has already begun. I staggered back, colliding with the trunk. The costume spilled further, sending up a choking cloud of dust. When I looked again, the mirror was normal. Just me, wide-eyed, shaking. I didn't linger. The next room was worse. Its walls were plastered with posters and playbills, each curling at the edges. I brushed dust from one and froze. It was another production from the 1930s, the lead role marked with a black circle. The same name. My name. I dropped the paper and turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. The sound rattled the glass in the frames, a deafening crack that echoed down the corridor. And then the voices began. They weren't whispers this time. They were strong, projected, like actors delivering lines to a full house. But the words were jumbled, overlapping, fragments of dialogue from different plays all at once. A cacophony of monologues, laughter, screams. The mirror in this room trembled. Dust rained down from the frame as the glass rippled like water. Shapes moved within it, people in costumes, makeup running down their faces, eyes hollow. They pressed against the glass from the other side, mouths opening and closing in silent cries. My light sputtered, then steadied. The shapes were gone. The mirror showed only me again. But the voices hadn't stopped. They were moving now, spreading down the hall, circling me like wolves. I bolted from the room, forcing the door open with my shoulder. The corridors seemed longer than before, lined with more doors, more mirrors. The air grew thicker with every step, the smell of makeup and perfume choking me. At the end of the hall, a set of stairs descended deeper into the backstage maze. My instincts screamed to leave, but my feet carried me down. The voices followed, stronger now, clearer. And beneath them, one voice rose above the rest. A single line, repeated over and over, in perfect rhythm. Take your place. Take your place. Take your place. The stairwell opened into a narrow passage that wound beneath the stage. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping cold water that echoed in the silence. My flashlight beam traced faded chalk markings on the walls, arrows, cues, bits of dialogue scrawled by hands long gone. The smell of mold mixed with something sweeter, heavier. Stage makeup, thick as grease, though no one had touched it in decades. At the end of the passage, I found myself beneath the trapdoor that led to the stage above. Dust sifted down from its seams with every creak of the boards overhead. And then I heard it. A voice. Clear, strong, rising from above me as if an actor had stepped onto the stage to deliver his monologue. The words were crisp, though I couldn't place the play. My chest tightened as a second voice answered, measured and dramatic. They were rehearsing. I froze, every muscle rigid. The stage above me was empty. I had seen it myself. Yet the cadence of the dialogue was unmistakable, the rhythm of lines exchanged before an invisible audience. The voices swelled, filling the theater. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to make sense of the words. They weren't random. It was a scene, complete and deliberate, though it shifted between tones, tragedy, comedy, anger. Like pieces of different plays stitched together into one. And then came the applause. Thunderous, rolling, though the seats above had been empty for decades. Dust rained from the ceiling with the force of it. The sound rose and fell, then stilled, leaving only my shallow breathing in the dark. My hand shook as I lifted the flashlight. Papers lay scattered on the ground nearby, scripts, torn and faded. I bent and lifted one. The ink had bled, but one line remained underlined in thick black. Enter Daniel. My stomach dropped. The beam of my light flicked across the wall, where more pages were plastered as if someone had nailed them there. They all carried the same word, written again and again, Daniel. The voices began once more, closer now, drifting down the stairwell as though the actors had descended to find me. I backed away, the papers crackling under my boots. A sudden gust swept through the passage, scattering the pages into the air. They whirled around me, brushing against my face and arms, carried by no wind I could feel. One stuck against my chest. I peeled it free with trembling hands. The cast list. My name was written at the top. Not as stagehand or supporting role. Lead. The voices were louder now. Clearer. I could hear every word. He has arrived. The show begins again. My flashlight dimmed, flickered, then steadied. For an instant, I thought I saw shadows on the wall ahead, figures standing tall, waiting, their faces blurred. The trapdoor above creaked. Slowly, carefully, it began to open. Light spilled down from the stage, blinding in contrast to the dark. The voices hushed, replaced by silence so sharp it cut. And then, from above, a single command rang out. Take your place. I don't remember climbing back up the stairwell. One moment I was beneath the stage, the trapdoor opening, the voices calling for me. The next, I was standing among the broken boards again, my flashlight beam dancing across the empty hall. Empty, or so I told myself. The silence had changed. It wasn't silence at all anymore. It was anticipation, the way a theater feels seconds before the curtain rises. I could almost hear the held breath of hundreds of people waiting in the dark. My legs carried me down the steps into the rows of seats. Dust rose with each step, curling in the light. I lowered myself into one of the cracked velvet chairs. The springs groaned beneath my weight, the sound loud, too loud. And then, another groan. Not from my chair. From the one beside me. I froze. My light cut across the seat. Empty. But the cushion was depressed, as though someone had just settled there. The groaning spread. Row by row, seat by seat, as though a crowd was lowering themselves into place. I swung the light across the theater, but there was no one. Only rows of empty chairs sagging with invisible weight. A shiver ran through me. From the stage, the curtain stirred. Slowly, painfully, the fabric shifted as though pulled by unseen hands. The sound it made was like a long sigh. Then came the applause. It started softly, 2, 3 pairs of hands clapping in unison. Then it grew, rolling forward, swelling into a roar. The entire hall shook with it, thunderous and alive. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, raining over me like ash. I pressed my palms to my ears, but the sound only grew louder, echoing inside my skull. My light trembled over the stage as the curtain drew back, inch by inch, until the boards stood bare. No actors waited there. Only shadows. They stretched tall and thin, moving with jerks and shudders, faceless silhouettes cast by no source of light. They spread across the boards, arranging themselves as though rehearsing positions. The applause ceased. A stillness hung in the air, so heavy I could barely breathe. Then a single spotlight blinked to life overhead, its beam landing on the center of the stage. Dust swirled in its path, glowing like ash in firelight. The shadows turned to face me. I tried to rise, but my legs refused. The seat held me fast, as though the velvet had gripped my body. A voice rang out, strong and clear, cutting through the silence. He is here. The audience around me erupted. Not applause this time. Cheers, whistles, laughter, a cacophony of approval. I twisted in my seat, heart hammering, and for the first time I saw them. Not fully, not clearly, but shapes filled the rows, heads, shoulders, the outlines of people seated all around me. Their faces were indistinct, blurred as though smeared with smoke. But I felt their eyes. All of them. Watching. Waiting. On stage, the shadows moved as one. The play had begun. And I realized, with a dread that sank into my bones, that the spotlight wasn't meant for them. It was meant for me. The spotlight pinned me to my seat. Dust swirled in the cone of light, glowing like falling ash, and the air thickened until I could hardly breathe. The shadows on the stage shifted, sliding into their places as though they had rehearsed for this moment endlessly. A voice rang out, strong and clear, from somewhere above the stage. Act 1. The curtain shuddered, then opened fully. The shapes moved forward, no longer just shadows but figures, actors draped in ragged costumes, their faces blurred as if smeared with smoke. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, like marionettes pulled by invisible strings. Yet when they spoke, their voices filled the theater with perfect clarity. At first, I didn't recognize the lines. They were fragments, stitched together, monologues from plays I might have heard once but couldn't place. But then the words began to change. They sharpened, bent into something else. They were speaking about me. I gripped the arms of the chair as the first actor raised his hands and spoke my name. My name, said like it belonged in the script all along. Another answered, recounting events from my childhood, details so small, so buried in memory, no one else could know them. My throat tightened. My flashlight slipped from my lap and clattered to the floor. The play continued. Scene after scene unfolded, each actor adding pieces of my life. My first apartment, my mother's illness, even the words I spoke to a friend only weeks ago. They delivered them like rehearsed lines, perfect and precise, their hollow faces never shifting from me. And the audience roared with approval. The seats around me shook with invisible hands clapping, whistling, cheering. I twisted, and in the flicker of the spotlight I saw them again. Blurred faces, rows of heads and shoulders filling every chair, all turned toward the stage. Toward me. The play built to a fever pitch. One actor stepped forward, his voice booming. He will take the stage. He has always been meant to take the stage. A second actor appeared at his side, holding a stack of yellowed papers. He dropped them one by one across the boards. Scripts. Pages scattering like leaves. The spotlight shifted. It swung away from the actors, away from the center of the stage. It swung toward me. The audience erupted in thunderous applause, deafening, shaking the hall to its foundation. I tried to stand, but my body wouldn't move. The velvet beneath me gripped tighter, holding me in place. My legs kicked uselessly against the floor. On stage, the lead actor extended a hand. His faceless head tilted, as if inviting me forward. The papers at his feet caught in a wind that shouldn't have been there, swirling into the air, circling above the stage before falling into my lap. My trembling hands lifted the top page. It was a script. The title read, "The Last Performance." Beneath it, in bold black ink, was the cast list. My name stood alone at the top. Lead role. The crowd hushed at once. Silence pressed in, thick and absolute. The actor pointed directly at me. Enter Daniel. The spotlight burned hotter. The velvet seat released its grip. My legs moved, not by choice but by command. Step by step, I rose from the chair, my body carrying me down the aisle, up the steps, and onto the stage. The actors parted, making room. The script in my hands trembled, its pages fluttering though the air was still. Behind me, the audience clapped once, in unison. The curtain began to close. The curtain swallowed the light, leaving only a thin slit of stage and the roar of invisible applause behind it. My hands clenched the script so tightly the paper threatened to tear. Each page trembled as though alive, lines scrawled in heavy ink that shifted and changed before my eyes. I lifted my head. The actors stood around me in a half circle. Their faces were still blurred, smudged like wet paint, but I could feel their gaze. Waiting. Expectant. Behind them, the cracked backdrop of the stage stretched high, painted once to resemble a grand ballroom. Now the paint flaked away, revealing only blackness. The spotlight fixed on me. A voice boomed overhead, louder than before, vibrating in my bones. Act 2. The audience erupted. The seats rattled, wooden frames slamming as though hundreds shifted forward to the edge of their chairs. I turned to the wings, searching for escape, but the curtains hung heavy as stone, their folds endless and unyielding. I looked down at the script. The first line was underlined. I accept my role. My mouth went dry. I whispered the words before I could stop myself. The ink pulsed on the page, black sinking deeper until it vanished. The actors clapped. Once. In unison. Another line appeared below. You will not leave the stage. The audience thundered in agreement, stamping feet, clapping hands, voices chanting together. I staggered back, but the spotlight followed, locking me in its glare. Stop, I shouted, though my voice cracked. I never agreed to this. The actors tilted their heads in unison. Their movements were too precise, too rehearsed. One of them stepped forward, holding out his hands. The mask he carried, a white, hollow smile, gleamed in the light. Take it, the voice boomed. I shook my head, clutching the script like a shield. But my hands betrayed me. Slowly, against my will, I reached. The mask was cold, heavier than plaster, and when I pressed it against my face it fit perfectly, sealing against my skin. The theater roared with approval. Through the eye holes, the world shifted. The audience was no longer blurred. Hundreds of faces stared back at me, pale and waxen, their mouths open in silent cheer. Some I recognized, actors from the old posters, faces from faded photographs. Others were strangers. And in the very back row, half shrouded in shadow, was someone I swore I knew. Someone I had lost long ago. The curtain rose again. The play resumed. The actors moved, their voices blending into one, reciting lines that flowed like prophecy. My body followed, each gesture, each word spilling from me as though rehearsed for years. The applause rose and fell, carrying me deeper into the rhythm. Time dissolved. Minutes, hours, I couldn't tell. The performance had no end, only acts upon acts, each folding into the next. And then, darkness. The lights died. The stage vanished. The applause ceased. I stood in silence, the mask still fused to my skin, the script heavy in my hands. When I opened my eyes again, I was outside. The theater loomed behind me, windows shattered, marquee blank. The sun was rising. Cars hissed down the street. Life moved on as though nothing had happened. I touched my face. My skin was bare. No mask. No script. My hands shook, empty. But when I walked past a shop window, I saw my reflection in the glass. The mask was still there,